So our society so often thinks of the word atonement, I think, from a Christian perspective, of the atonement of sins, and particularly how Jesus' death atoned for humanity's sins. Now, having grown up with that, studying it as an adult, I can honestly say it never really resonated with me. In the Hebrew tradition in which I grew up, though, there was a concept of atonement. In fact, the highest holy day of the year, coming up this next Tuesday night, is called the Day of Atonement. If we remember the book of Exodus, chapter 32, I'm sure everybody remembers that. Moses, after delivering the Ten Commandments to Moses, God tells Moses, and I quote, "Hurry down, for your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have acted basely." End quote. And then God says something very interesting after that. He says, "Now leave me alone, that my anger may blaze forth against them, and I may destroy them and make you a great nation." End quote. So Moses argues with God to turn away from its blazing anger and to remember the ancestors with which a covenant had been made. And the rest, of course, is history for the Jewish people. So it's interesting to think about God was going to take the same action that God did with Noah and destroy all of humanity and just start over with Moses again. Even though after Noah, God had sworn not to do that again. God was going to pull itself back and separate itself from humanity, but change its mind when it was drawn back into a relationship by and with Moses. And then it was drawn back into covenant with the Jewish people. And that to me is the first lesson of the story, that too often when we become hurt and angry at something, for let's remember, hurt and anger do connect with each other. We're angry because we are hurt by something. When that happens, we often separate ourselves and stew over it. And by stewing over something, we remain focused on the hurt and the anger, and we get stuck in it. And we will stay stuck in it until we are brought back into, or we bring ourselves back into relationship. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore what's happened to us, or even that we have to forgive what was done. We just shouldn't retreat from our relationship with the world or our community due to it, and hide our true selves away from the world for fear of further hurt. No, we can look backward and return to and remember our true nature, and return and look forward to a different future. Maybe not quite such an idealized future, but perhaps the future that it can be. But we can only do this through covenanted relationships with each other. Moses comes back down the mountain to his people and finds them worshiping a golden calf. And upon seeing this, if anybody remembers the movie with Charlton Heston, the Ten Commandments, he takes them and he throws the tablets and containing the commandments of his people, destroying the tablets. And he later returns to God, spending 40 days and nights while a second copy of the commandments are written. And tradition has it, that's actually in the Bible. Tradition has it that Yom Kippur is the day that God gave Moses the second set of commandments, and Moses returned with them to the people. In the Jewish tradition, the word for atonement is teshuvah. This Hebrew word literally means a turning. And we see this in God returning to a relationship with Moses, and Moses returning to his people, and Moses returning to God. One or all of us, we have the opportunity to always return to the path. A path that has been and always is and always will be present to us. We know what it is for ourselves. And it may be different for each one of us, but we know somewhere deep within what our path is, and we just have to choose that path. The path that we can find through reflection, the path of relationship, the path that leads to wholeness in our life. And that's why I love the title to the reading, At One, Atonement. If you look at the word, and you break it down, it is at one with. So if we are to be whole, we have to be at one, not only with ourselves, but not only with ourselves, but with our community and with the earth which sustains our lives. We have to consciously take action and ask for forgiveness of those that we have hurt, whether they accept it or not, and we have to commit to act in the future in a way that does not cause such pain again. That is the conscious choice that we each have to make. Just as God had a change of heart in the story, so too must we be willing to have a change of heart. And by having a change of heart, we can lead to a change in our habits in our life. The habits that lead to separation from others, that lead to separation of connection, to community and our very planet. We need to change those habits. We must turn to a life of righteous action and good deeds. And by choosing to do so, to go forward, to act with kindness, with love, with generosity of spirit, with all that we meet, we will have turned away from the times where we may have missed the mark, turned towards acting with reflection and intention. So let us begin again in love. Yes, the Universalist side of our Unitarian Universalist heritage has a strong position on atonement. And that position is that God's love is infinite and humanity does not need to sacrifice anything to be in relationship with God. The Universalists believe that upon death all human beings would be reconciled with God. Hosea Ballou was probably the most eloquent of ministers, Universalist ministers, and he was in a large part the reason why Universalism became so popular in the 1800s in this country. He also wrote quite prolifically, including his Treatise on Atonement, a systematic theological statement about his beliefs on sin and God and atonement. Ballou believed in the unity of God and did not believe that Jesus died for our sins. He believed that upon Jesus' death, a loving spirit was unleashed in the world. Now, the Universalists, you have to understand, came about as a sharp reaction to the Calvinism of its day, which taught, among other things, the total depravity of humanity, that only some are selected to be saved, which coincidentally happened to be the wealthy church people, and also limited atonement. The Universalists rejected all of that outright. In his treatise, Ballou stated, and I quote, "There is nothing in heaven above nor in the earth below that can do away with sin, but love. And we have reason to be eternally thankful that love is stronger than death. Love is thus the highest reconciliatory force, and it is not bound by any particular religion, location, or denomination." End quote. And I would say this is where our first principle comes from, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In Universalist theology, it is not God who needed to be reconciled with humans, but humans who needed to be reconciled with God. Of course, the Universalists, like everyone, believed that once everyone became aware of this, they would then be inspired to live a moral life. It didn't always work out that way. Now, Unitarians, by and large, believe that humans need to be reconciled with each other and not God. Unitarians spoke of salvation through character and how we needed to constantly work towards improving and cultivating ourselves. Quoting William Ellery Channing, I quote, "I call that mind free, which sets no bounds to its love, which is not imprisoned in itself, which recognizes in all human beings the image of God and the rights of God's children, which delights in virtue and sympathizes with suffering wherever they are seen, which conquers pride, anger, sloth, and offers itself up a willing victim to the cause of humankind. We are free, each of us, free to follow the path of love, unlimited, unselfish, unasked for. It is there to tap into. It is there for us to dispense. I believe it is that which we all yearn for. There is a strand in almost every great religion that speaks to love as a driving force in the universe. In Judaism, we are asked to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our might, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Jesus as well speaks often about love, confirming the Jewish admonition to love and going further in telling us to love our enemies. From the Hindu Vedas, and I quote, "The one who loves all intensely begins perceiving in all living beings a part of themselves. They become a lover of all, a part and parcel of the universal joy. They flow with the stream of happiness and is enriched by each soul." End quote. The Quran defines Allah, or God, as love. And in many instances, the Quran focuses on love, stating, love is rewarded, love is steadfast, love, real love, does not decay. And if I go to Sufi Islam, well, it is infused with love. As in my favorite poem by Hafiz, where he states, "Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Look at what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky." End quote. So I invite you to light up your inner life and let that inner light shine out on the world as well. Let us realize that our long tradition speaks alongside all other world religions about how love can lead us to a life of wholeness. And I am not speaking only of romantic love, although that is an expression of love, but also to a love that leads us to something other than ourselves. A love that reaches beyond our own self-satisfaction. A love whose compassion is endless and is for all of existence. A love that is selfless. A love that knows no bounds. A love that calls us to act for the stranger, the orphan, the widow, as it says in the scriptures, or in the words of our world, the immigrant, the homeless, the oppressed, the powerless, especially black lives in this day and age, to bring love where there is no love. And so I ask you to ask yourselves, what are you doing to bring love into the world? Ask yourselves, what could you be doing to bring love into the world? In what ways can you be at one with the universe? If you are one with the universe, what you do for others, even the least of us, we are doing to and for ourselves. And lastly, what are we doing to preserve and to love our Mother Earth, the land that sustains us, that has been provided us with all that we need to thrive? This wondrous universe that we have evolved from stardust billions of years ago. We should care for it with love, if for no other reason than to show our love for our descendants and to show appreciation for our lives. Atonement just doesn't happen. We have to first want it, and then we have to let go of what is holding us back, and then we have to turn towards it. Turn and creep and turn again until we find ourselves at the end, when we find the truth in which we all can live. May it be so.